For those that don't know me, my name is Amar Habib. I'm a student in this class. I've been attending this class for about 3.5 years now.
Yeah, you keep one of the
And first of all, before we begin, I would like to thank Sister Fatia for last night letting Bob come to our house for dinner, having a dinner party for us. We really appreciate her doing that, and inshallah we pray that Allah may raise you station in paradise, inshallah. And last September, Dr. Kali asked me to start giving a lecture on a monthly basis. So I've been giving a 20-minute lecture on a monthly basis here for about a few months now. And I really enjoy giving lectures because I feel like as I get to teach you all and reinforce stuff to you all, I learn more myself. And that's what life's really about, learning. And before I begin, I want to say I begin in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most kind. Allah's peace and blessings on all the prophets, from Prophet Adam, the Prophet Noah, the Prophet Ibrahim, Prophet Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all. And make the intention, I'm here for the love of Allah. Today, what I want to talk to you all about, like the handout says, is the 107th chapter of the Quran, chapter Ma'un. And I'll tell you how I came about choosing this topic. I've been working recently and memorizing some more of the shorter surahs, or shorter chapters. And I was reading a chapter Ma'un. I read a perspective on it I hadn't seen before, so I just want to share a perspective with you all. And so let's start off with the background of this chapter. Chapter Ma'un, like I said, it's the 107th chapter of the Quran. Most chapters towards the end, like this one, are fairly short and fairly small in length, but they have a wealth of information in them, and an ocean of knowledge. And as to when this chapter was revealed, there's some debate as to whether it's a pre-migration verse or a post-migration verse. But most scholars would agree it's a post-migration verse based on the fact it's talking about social obligations and it refers to hypocrites. And these are both themes of post-migration verses. And the theme of this chapter is belief in the hereafter and belief in the Day of Judgment. And belief in the Day of Judgment is a very core belief in Islam. In fact, if we look back when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, started teaching Islam, his three main things he was teaching were belief in the oneness of Allah, belief in Prophet Muhammad's prophethood, and belief in the Day of Judgment. Right, and why is belief in the Day of Judgment important? It's important because belief in the Day of Judgment is the basic motivation you and I have to do good and stay away from evil. I'll touch on this later on. And belief in the Day of Judgment is also one of the 6 articles of faith in Islam. The 6 articles of faith are, number 1, belief in one of Allah, Tawheed. Number 2, belief in all the prophets. And we believe in all the Prophet Adam, Prophet Ibrahim, Prophet Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them, and give them all the respect they deserve. Number 3, belief in the angels. And 4, belief in all the books of Allah sent, the scrolls of Ibrahim, the Psalms of David, the Torah, the Bible, the Quran. We believe it's all originally came from Allah. Number 5, belief in the Day of Judgment, which we're talking about today. Number 6 is belief in the divine decree of Allah. In chapter Ma'un, what it talks about the characteristics somebody who does not believe in the Day of Judgment has, right? And so it's really telling the listeners to analyze themselves and use this as a litmus test. Right, in chemistry, a litmus test is a test you do to see if something is acidic or basic. So we take that metaphor and apply it over here. We can use this chapter as a test to see we all say we believe in the Day of Judgment, for our actions showing that we believe in the Day of Judgment. Right? So start off, I'll ask Brother Javed, can you please read the first verse? I'll leave you read the first verse, please.
Oh, from here?
Yeah.
107.1?
Yes.
Have you seen him who belies the rewards and punishment of hereafter?
Thank you. And belies is opposite of believe. So saying, have you seen the one who disbelieves in the rewards and punishments of the hereafter? So this verse is speaking to listeners. It's asking them a rhetorical question. Right? Instead of the word seeing, because all these characteristics we talk about, you can physically see with your eyes. Right? And as much as it's telling you to look at other people, it's time to look at themselves and see, do they really believe in the hereafter? Are their actions showing that they believe? So it's setting up the test, so to speak. Like I mentioned before, Why is believing the Day of Judgment important? It's because believing the Day of Judgment is the basic motivation you and I have to do good and stay away from evil. Let's talk about it for a second. See, if someone believes in the Day of Judgment, then what's their mentality? Their mentality is, this life is a test, it's not the end, and I'm going to be judged. So therefore, I'll go on my way to do good things as much as I humanly possibly can, and I'll go on my way to stay away from bad things as much as I humanly possibly can. But on the flip side, someone who doesn't believe in the Day of Judgment believes this life is the end, is living after that. Right? So the mentality is, who cares? There's no good or bad. I'm just going to enjoy myself and have a good time while I'm alive, right? And we can see this if we look at modern statistics. I did a little research, and I came across a few good articles in the New York Times on the subject, published in 2010. Which developed country has the highest crime rate? If you look at that, the country is England. When it comes to robberies, break-ins, and all kinds of assault, England has the highest crime rate. And we were listening to a lecture by Dr. Ghadi's younger son, whose name is Dr. Yasser Ghadi, and he mentioned the number one atheist country in the world is also England, right? It's not a coincidence it's happening because someone's atheist, they don't believe in Day of Judgment, and what their mentality is, it's not a bad thing if I'm caught, right? So of course they don't care if they're doing bad good things. Alright, so this is a very true concept what I'm talking about. So let's look at the second verse. Stiha, can you please read the second verse?
He it is who drives away the orphan with harshness.
Thank you. So notice here, the first characteristic isn't about praying or fasting, it's a social obligation, right? Showing us the importance of social obligations. And it's talking about taking care of orphans. And taking care of orphans is a very, very high responsibility in Islam. There's a lot of reasons for that. I don't have time to get into those reasons. But when it says driving with orphans, I believe the handout says this as well. There are three meanings. The first is depriving an orphan of their inheritance, right? And this is actually, according to the saying of Prophet Muhammad, this is one of the 7 major sins, that's depriving an orphan of their inheritance. It shows you how important it is, right, to take care of orphans. The second is repulsing them if they come to you for help, rather than showing kindness. Or even if we physically can't do anything for the orphan, the least we can do is make a dua for them, right? Ill-treating them is more generally ill-treating them. And like I said, this is about social obligations, first verse. It's showing you how important social obligations is. And there's a saying of Prophet Muhammad where he talks about treating orphans properly, and I'll read the saying. He said that whoever looks after an orphan, whoever looks after an orphan provides for them will be like this in paradise, right? So that shows you how important it is to look after orphans, right? Through your energies, through your money, right? We live in America, so we may see orphans walking on the street like in other countries. We can support orphanages with our time or our money, right? Islam teaches us to treat everyone, especially orphans, with ihsan, right? And who knows what the definition of ihsan is? What's the definition of ihsan?
Doing more than what you're obligated to do, expecting less than what you deserve, and doing both with a big smile.
Exactly. So
you put your test on the test?
I warned him ahead of time. He was ready. So ihsan is basically going the extra mile, right? You're doing more than you need to do, doing less your basic right, and doing both with positive mentality, like with a good attitude, going the extra mile. So ihsan really is the basic concept for all social obligations of Islam, right? If you want to summarize all of Islamic obligations for society we have to each other, the word to summarize it is ihsan. So let's go ahead and look at this third verse. Jamal, could you please read the third verse?
And does not urge giving away the food of the poor.
Thank you. And it's really interesting how this verse is worded in the Quran. This has several meanings. First, it doesn't mean they don't urge themselves to feed the poor. And the second meaning is they don't urge their own household to feed the poor. And the third is they don't urge society generally to feed the poor, right? Because we can't go, Islam is not lip service. We have to do ourselves, but we teach others to do it, right? And it's just saying of Prophet Muhammad when it comes to feeding the poor, looking after the poor. Now read the saying to you. It's the one who looks after the poor and works for a widow and for a poor person. It's like a warrior fighting for others' cause, or like a person who fasts the day and prays all night. This shows you the blessings you get for feeding the poor. And again, notice this is another social obligation. Right? Praying and fasting haven't been mentioned yet. Because, praying and fasting and going monk are very, very important, right? But in some aspects, our social obligations are just as important. And if feeding the poor doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to involve thousands of dollars. Feeding the poor can be as simple as rolling out your window at a stop sign, giving $10 to the homeless person who lives living under a bridge. Right? Because it starts with small stuff. The small deeds we do will pile up into a mountain for us on the day of judgment, inshallah. And some people have the mindset that, when at the stop sign, you don't give money to a poor person. They don't know what the person's going to do with the money. He might go buy beer or might go do something unlawful with it. But in reality, that's not our responsibility what to do with it. It's our duty, right? Giving the poor is not a charity. It's a duty we have. That's what's called social obligation, not social charity. Our duty is to give them the means to get money, and what to do with that between them and Allah. And sometimes the narrow mindset I see, especially with Muslims, sometimes come across, so they don't give money to a poor person because they don't think he really needs it. He's quote unquote a professional beggar. He doesn't need money. He's not really hungry. I'm not going to judge people who have that mentality, but what I do know is Prophet Muhammad never turned anyone away from his door. If anyone came to him for help, he would help them regardless. I'm sure people that came to him didn't really need it. I'm sure people that came to him were professional beggars, but he always gave them the benefit of the doubt. He always helped them. If he had one date in his house, rather than keeping himself, he would give it to another person. In fact, there's a story when one time someone came to him for help, he didn't give them. He would send Hazrat Bilal out to get a loan for something, right? And so, I said, why don't we just all adopt that mentality? Why don't we all follow the conduct of Prophet Muhammad and give people the benefit of the doubt when they come to us to help? Right? And second of all, giving charity is not really costing us anything, because everything we give comes back to us tenfold, right? Because I'm sure, on the day of judgment, none of us want to be in a position where Allah tells us that someone starved to death because we didn't give them money because we thought they were lying, right? What are you going to say on the day of judgment when Allah asks you why didn't you give so-and-so money when he really needed it, right? Let's look at this fourth verse. Ross, can you please read verse number 4?
Then what was the claim?
Thank you. Here are chapters switching gears a little bit. Now from these first verses are speaking generally about mankind. Now specifically talking about hypocrites. Right? Hypocrite, what's the definition of hypocrite? Hypocrite is someone who says they believe in something, their actions don't back it up. That's a very simple definition of a hypocrite. So let's look at the fifth verse. Falzan, can you please read verse number 5?
Who are careless of their prayer.
Thank you. And this is the first attribute of hypocrite. It's the careless of their prayer. And it makes sense to be careless because if they don't really believe in what they're saying they believe, and of course they won't take prayer seriously. And careless of prayer is kind of a wide encompassing word. We can break it down into 2 categories. As the handout says, the first category is they do not establish a prayer. The Quran never tells us to pray, it tells us to establish a prayer. There's a big difference. Establish your prayer means that you base your schedule around your prayers, not your prayers on your schedule. Right? Very simple. Those of us who have been to Makkah and Medina, we can see this. Their entire society is based around the prayer times, right? They don't pray when they have 5 minutes extra. When there's time to pray, they have a system, right? And what else is, and even though we don't live in a Muslim country, we can use that mentality for our personal lives, right? What else does establish a prayer mean? It means you are aware of your prayer times, right? It means you have a routine to your prayers. You're not doing it at the 11th hour. When it's prayer time, you stop what you're doing and you pray, right? If you're watching TV, you turn your TV off and you go pray. You don't pray during the commercial break, right? What's an example? It can also mean you have a certain area in your room or your house you pray. It can be a whole room or a part of a room, right? It can also mean, establishing prayer can also mean you have a family come together and decide, we'll pray, this means pray every day, make a commitment, took that commitment. These are all examples of establishing a prayer. And on the other hand, a hypocrite does not establish a prayer. They pray at the last minute, they pray at the 11th hour, they pray during the commercial break, on watching TV, and if they miss their prayer, it doesn't bother them. They don't try to make it up, right? Well, the second definition of careless of the prayer, it means being absent-minded during your prayer, right? It doesn't mean you don't make mistakes, right? All of us are humans. We make mistakes. We might recite something wrong. We might lose count of which rekat we're on. And Allah understands this because He knows we're human. He doesn't expect us to be perfect. But being absent-minded, it means you're intentionally letting your mind wander off, right? It's understandable if we're praying and something pressing our mind might start to wander off. But a believer, when he sees the mind wandering off the prayer, immediately brings it back. He doesn't intentionally let it continue to wander, right? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. If our mind wanders during prayer, do we bring it back immediately, or are we continuing to let it wander? Let's look at this, verse number 6. Who hasn't read yet?
Who do good to be seen.
Thank you. This sentence, it's kind of interesting how the sentence is worded. It can be a continuation of the previous verse, or it can be seen as independently. So let's first look at it as a continuation of the previous verse. It's saying that they only pray to be seen in public. If they're in public gatherings, if they're at the masjid, at a dinner party, they'll pray, everyone else gets to pray. But at home, they could care less, right? And that's one of the characteristics of someone who goes with the day judgment. Second case, looking at this verse independently, it's saying that they only perform acts of goodness to be seen in public, right? And their intention is wrong. Their intention is to be seen by people. They're not doing it for the sake of Allah. And of course we know these deeds won't be accepted by Allah, because what Prophet Muhammad told us is you'll be judged on the basis of your intention and your attitude, right? So before we go out and do good deeds, our intention needs to be for the sake of Allah, right? Like for example, let's say I give $1,000 in charity, and my intention is I'm doing to be seen. And let's say Malcolm, he gives $10 in charity, but he does it for the love of Allah. And obviously, Malcolm's charity is going to be much more loved by Allah and be accepted by Allah. And chances are my charity, because the whole basis of it is wrong, won't be accepted. When we do good deeds, it's about doing it for the sake of Allah, for the love of Allah, not to be seen. It's okay if people see us doing them, but that's not our intention as believers, right? So let's look at this last verse, and what how small kindness is. In the chapter of this chapter's title is Ma'un, which is small kindness, so that's the word being used here. Small kindness has a couple meanings. The first meaning it means is kind of simple charities, like loaning you a pot or a pan to a neighbor, right? That's the form of very simple charity. Or a more contemporary example, if your neighbor has a guest and asks, can they park in your driveway? That's the example of very simple charity. And betrayal hypocrites, they won't even do these simple charities because, of course, they don't see anything good coming out of them because they don't really believe in their judgment. And they don't believe in any kind of reward coming from it. But being kind and generous to your neighbor is a very, very important aspect of Islam, right? It's something Islam really teaches to us. In fact, one time Prophet Muhammad was talking to his wife, Hazrat Aisha, and he told her Angel Gabriel kept telling him so much about to treat them kindly. He thought he would be instructed to make them his heirs. That's how much Islam emphasizes being good to your neighbor. The second meaning of small kindness means having common courtesy. Smiling, talking nicely, holding a door for someone behind you. But these acts is very, very simple charity. It was Prophet Muhammad's characteristic. He was always smiling. He always has a smile on his face. Smiling is the simplest form of charity. It doesn't cost anything. It takes 1 second to do, right? And because Prophet Muhammad was an example for all of us on how to be courteous to other people. But a hypocrite won't do this. Instead, they'll be harsher, and they won't care, how they're courteous or not. So that's about what we talked about so far. Like I started off saying, the thing about a chapter makes sense. Because the mindset of a person who doesn't believe in their judgment is, there's no good or bad. So why would they bother doing good stuff, right? While the mindset of a believer is, we all know we'll be judged. And we're motivated to go out and do good deeds as much as possible and stay away from bad deeds as much as possible. So like I said, this is a test for us. Let me explain what I mean by that. For example, let's say Ross looks at this list and goes down it, and he says, am I good to orphans? Check. Do I urge being the poor? Check. Do I pray with conscious mind? Check. Then he knows he's on the right path, right? He knows his actions are backing up his belief in their judgment. And of course, there's always room for improvement, but he's on the right path, and he should keep doing what he's doing. But let's say, for example, I look at this, and I say, be good to orphans. I'm kind of good to orphans. Do I urge the poor? If I'm in a good mood, I'll give charity, but otherwise, not really. Do I pray with conscious mind? Maybe 10% of the time. In this case, maybe I need to be honest with myself, and be honest, maybe my belief in their judgment is high enough, and I need to fix it, right? And so the question is, how do I fix it? And the answer to that question is very simple. It's the Quran, right? Dr. Ghazi made a statement last night. He said it very quickly, so I don't know if you heard it. He said the Quran is the mother of all belief, right? So establishing a relationship with the Quran is how you're ready to believe in everything, including the Day of Judgment, right? So because when we create a relationship with the Quran, we open our hearts to it, and we start to see all the miracles in the Quran. And when we see these miracles and we see the signs of Allah, our belief in the Day of Judgment goes up. And when our belief goes up, these characteristics will follow. Right? How do we make a relationship with the Quran? It's the practice of a believer to make a commitment to read a certain amount of the Quran every day. Block out a certain amount of time and read the Quran. Whether it's one verse or 100 verses, right? Some of us, like myself, are slow readers. So I make a commitment to read a quarter of a section, or spara, or juz, every day. Right? And my mother's a much faster reader. She reads more than that every day. Right? So we make a commitment to read the Quran every day. What we need to remember is not the quantity, it's the quality that matters. Right? It's our intention and the efforts to make a relationship with the Quran. Allah will meet us halfway when we do this. The example we use, we feed our bodies every day, 3 times a day, right? Let's see me 5 times a day for me, right? But so in the same way, we need to feed our spirit every day. We feed our spirit by reading the Quran with an open heart, with an open mind. And when we read the Quran every day with this mentality, our belief will go up and our actions will follow. So hopefully I made sense. Like I was saying, this chapter is only 7 verses long. There's really an ocean of knowledge in it. I want to thank you all for listening. I want to say anything wrong I said comes from me, anything right I say comes from Allah. And shall please forgive me if I say anything wrong. Thank you.